The idea of this series, First and Second Americans, is that what if we got a letter in the American church today? Because if you open the Bible, if you open the New Testament, one of the things you'll notice is after we get through the biographies of Jesus, most of the rest of the New Testament is a collection of letters. Letters written by first century apostles, people like Paul or Peter or James or John. If you've been here a while, you've heard me say Paul wrote this, John wrote this. And they're letters written to people, churches, Christians living in specific cities scattered throughout the Roman Empire. And they're explaining to them, hey, in your specific cultural context, what does it look like for you to follow Jesus, for you to organize your life around Jesus right where you live in this city? And these letters were often named after the recipient. So we have books of the Bible called Ephesians, named after the people of Ephesus, or 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, named after the people of Thessalonica, or 1st and 2nd Corinthians, which was written to the church in Corinth. Well, this series is 1st and 2nd Americans. What if God, through an apostle in the first century, wrote us a letter today? What would it tell us about organizing our lives around Jesus in our cultural moment, in our context today? And I think if one of those first century apostles could look into the future and see where we live in America today, I believe that the letter would start out with addressing our fears. Now, fear, as I said before, is not a bad thing by itself. It serves an important purpose. But fear becomes a problem when it's not properly calibrated. In other words, it triggers when there are things that you should not actually be afraid of, but it still creates fear inside of you. Let me give you an example of fear that is not properly calibrated. I'll put it on the screen here. Tarantulas are docile creatures. If you pick one up, I have your attention now, don't I? If you pick one up in your hand, that's what fear does. I want views. If you pick one up in your hands, it's happy to chill. Bites are incredibly, unbelievably rare. If you are bitten by a tarantula, it's harmless to humans, and they're less painful than a bee sting. Now, you're not even looking at a real tarantula. You're looking at a two-dimensional image of light projected onto a screen in a state in which tarantulas do not natively live. A very large screen. And many of you are thinking, I don't care, just get it off the screen. How many of you felt a little fear right there? Just a little uneasy, it's okay, yeah. That's fear that has not been properly calibrated. You know there's nothing to fear, but still something inside of us feels fear around that. Well, today what I want to show you is the primary reason why God gave us fear. This was part of God's design for humanity. There is an important purpose that it serves. And once you learn the actual reason why God gave us fear, the primary reason, and you learn to retrain your mind around that reason, I'm telling you, you're not going to be afraid of anything again. And that is not hyperbole. I'm going to demonstrate that to you today. The biblical authors write about fear hundreds of times. If you read the Bible from beginning to end, it is impossible to escape the theme of fear. It comes up over and over and over again. Now, I think the most succinct verse in the Bible that describes the purpose of fear for which God created it is found in the Old Testament in the book of Psalms, where we see that Psalm 147 says this: "The Lord delights in those who fear him, who put their hope in his unfailing love." Now, as we read that, for most of us, that does not make any sense. That there are too many ideas that are juxtaposed against one another that don't seem to fit together. What does this mean that the Lord delights in those who fear him? Because to us, it sounds like God is sadistic or abusive, as he wants us to be afraid of him, or God won't be happy until you're afraid of him. And then if we're afraid of him, how are we going to put our hope in him? And if he has this unfailing love that the author talks about, then why would we have fear of him in the first place? And as Americans, this verse doesn't make sense to us. But here's what's fascinating. The author who wrote this assumed it made perfect sense to his audience. The author didn't see any contradictions here, and he didn't explain it because his original audience didn't either. His original audience didn't see any contradictions here. This made perfect sense to them, but it doesn't make perfect sense to us, which exposes a certain weakness in theology that Americans have, including American Christians. But if we understand, if we unlock the meaning of this verse, here's what we're going to get to today. If you learn what it means to fear the Lord, you'll never be afraid again. If you learn what it means to fear the Lord, you will never be afraid again. And I believe the first century apostle that was most equipped to write to us on this topic would have been the Apostle John.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out that last clip. My name is James and I serve as the Digital Media Director at Hope Church. If you're interested in exploring more about this topic, just click the link down in the description. But we also wanted to take some time to personally invite you to come join us for our next live stream that's going to happen right here on YouTube starting at 8:25 a.m. Central. You'll be welcomed by our on-air host who will guide you through that day's experience. We have chat hosts ready to answer any questions that you might have, and we would just love for you to come be a part of our growing online community. But the real highlight is that we get a chance to meet you. So if you're interested in joining us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get notified when we go live this Sunday. I cannot wait to hang out with you, and we'll see you there.